being 44, I know that I'm moving into perimenopause.
Yeah.
So the way I look at perimenopause is something that is just, it's inevitable. It's a natural phase that anyone with a period, with a menstrual cycle will go through. And maybe that's the benefit of the work that I do, helping other women who are having this experience. But I've been able to identify what's going on with me. So I see changes in my period. Last year, one of the symptoms that I was experiencing, and this is due to estrogen levels that are just rapidly fluctuating, was migraines. First thought, okay, I'll just tough this out. And then I thought, what am I doing? Like, what?
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can deal with it. I'm fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and it wasn't fine.
Hello, you lovely, lovely human being. How are you? How are you today? How is it going? My name is Karen Arthur. I am your host and founder of this podcast, Menopause Whilst Black, the podcast that is committed to sharing the stories of people experiencing menopause, primarily based in the UK. Black folks, I missed that out of the equation. And that's important because it's about ensuring that people who look like me are heard so that we don't come across our symptoms and the things that happen to us during perimenopause and menopause and think that it's just us, that think that we're all alone. And that's what this podcast, Menopause Whilst Black, is all about. Welcome to season 6, episode 7. What are you up to? So while you're thinking about your answer or while you're answering, I will tell you about what's up with me. I've been in Barbados for the last 2 weeks and 2 days, and yes, I was counting. There are all sorts of reasons why I was there, but mostly because I wanted to rest. I booked it last year because I was going to run the second cohort of the Joy Retreat Barbados. But that didn't happen, and I'll explain that in another episode. It is coming, but it's coming for 2025, and we're working on it now. But so initially I was going to kind of finalize that as well as see my family. But when I decided not to run the Joy Retreat Barbados for Black women experiencing menopause this year, I wasn't going to waste that ticket. And so I went to Barbados and I loved it, and I loved being with my family. I didn't do a great deal. I don't need to sightsee anymore. I saw some friends. I saw some family, controversial, not all of them. And I slept. I slept. And what I loved most was slowing down. Feeling warm, not just warmth on my skin, warmth in my bones. Eating lots of delicious, some nutritious, not so much food. But I'll tell you more about that another time. You're not here for me. You are here for my guest. And my guest this week is a wonderful woman who I met a few years ago when I ran a live event around fashion. Those of you who don't know, I also founded the movement Wear You're Happy, which is around the positive effects of choosing clothes to lift your mood and basically wearing what you bloody like. Anyway, I will leave you to listen to my next guest, and I will see you on the other side. Enjoy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to read my guest's bio right now. So Lanice Brothers is a yoga teacher and registered nutritionist. specializing in women's health hormones and the menstrual cycle. Lanice works with women through their menstruating years, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. She set up her private practice, Eat, Love, Move, to help empower and educate women to understand their bodies, advocate for better healthcare, and heal. Lanice is also the host of Period Story podcast, which I've been on twice, which aims to break taboos around menstrual health, hormones, perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. Lanice has helped hundreds of women improve their menstrual and hormone health through her private practice and group programs, her Instagram page, and talks and workshops. Her first book, You Can Have a Better Period, was released in March 2022. Welcome, Lanice.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's been a while. We know each other from Instagram.
Yep.
And we have mutual friends. And also, you were the first speaker on my first Where You Happy Live all those years ago in 2000. And I can't remember. I want to say 19, but it might have been earlier.
Yeah. Wow. That feels like a long time ago now.
It was a long time, and lots has happened since then, including your book. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about yourself, Lanice. I've read lots of wonderful things about you. Who are you outside your title?
I am a woman who is very passionate about helping others. I kind of use my own experience of having really terrible periods, really painful periods, as a kind of driver for my passion. And then, of course, the experiences that I hear from women every day, the women that I work with, the women that I speak to on social media.
Mm,
It's really kind of the fuel for the kind of passion that I have around helping women understand their bodies better, helping them navigate through what can feel like a maze of healthcare
yeah,
and find better solutions that are long lasting rather than a kind of band-aid.
yeah, 100%. And what lights you up? What makes you laugh? What do you love to do?
Oh gosh, that's a fun question. Um, at the moment, what's really fun is my son is 10 and
Mhm.
he's really discovering his sense of humor.
Okay.
And so he loves telling these little jokes. And it's just so funny because it's funny to hear what thinks is funny.
Yeah.
And then he started to tell me that I have a really dark sense of humor because I do. I like have, and sometimes I say things and I'm like, oh, is that a bit too dark to have said in front of my son? And he says, Mama, that was so dark. And then and yeah, so that's it. That's been really fun. Kind of makes me laugh hearing his sense of humor and like seeing that kind of form and he finds funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's that wonderful thing about discovering your children have personalities. I mean, we know that they have personalities, but my grandson's 4, and discovering that he's hilarious, and the things that he loves to doing at the moment, his favourite thing is to do tricks on his scooter, much to the fright of his mother and myself. But yeah, that's a beautiful thing, that relationship and that growth.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also, them developing their own interests.
Yeah,
And what I say to my husband is that I think it's really important to be interested in or show an interest in what
yeah,
they're interested in. Some
mm,
things I'm not really that interested in. Like he loves playing Fortnite, which is this video game. And I like know what it is because I want to be aware. But
yeah,
I decided that because my son also loves football,
Mhm.
And I decided that I was going to figure out, learn about it. And
Yeah.
then now we watch, like, we support Arsenal, up the
Mm.
Gunners, and
Sorry, any
and
Tottenham supporters.
and we just, like, we watch some matches together. Like last night we watched some match, and it's actually really fun having this thing that
Yeah,
him and I do together. Yeah, so that's been really fun too. I
that's
know this isn't a parenting podcast, but
no, 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 no. I know this is about you at the end of the
yeah,
day.
yeah,
What's important to you, and your relationship with your son is important to you. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So,
yeah.
Denise, what is your heritage? Where are your parents from?
Um, so my mom is Bahamian, and my dad is Canadian,
Hmm.
and my dad is mixed race. So his mom is of Scottish heritage, um, and then his dad is mixed Afro Canadian and Indigenous Canadian.
Oh,
Yeah,
a lot going on there. And
yeah, yeah.
are they in Canada? Are they elsewhere?
No, they live in Miami now. So
Okay, all
yeah,
right.
Florida. Yeah. So
And
that's a
where are
fun
you
place.
based? Yeah, where are you based?
I'm in London.
Okay. And how old are you?
I am, how old am I? I'm 44.
Are you sure?
I'm at that. I think, there's this age you get to where you actually sometimes have to stop and think, oh,
Yeah.
actually, how old am I versus how old am I going to be? And I
Yes.
just I have this, okay, I'm 30, turning 45 this
Mhm,
year. But
mhm,
then I had to think, am I 44 or 45? And no,
mhm.
I'm 44.
Well, I'm a lot older than you, but I do exactly the same thing. It never changes. I think we're I only ask that on this podcast because it's often relevant to where you are on your journey.
Yeah.
But otherwise it wouldn't it's not a thing, you know. So the big question, who taught you about menopause?
So that's a really interesting question because I I wasn't taught per se
Mm,
in the sense that, like, I learned about it from, the work that I do,
yes.
but I observed what was happening with my grandmother. So my paternal grandmother, she was going through what I thinking back now and how old she must have been. She must have been in her kind of late 40s, early 50s. So
Mm,
either having just finished her period or like just on the, like, a few years on the other side. And she had the worst hot flashes.
oh wow.
Um, so living in the Bahamas where it's very hot in the summer, and then navigating those hot flashes in the heat, it was just, I just remember she always had like some paper towels with her,
Yeah.
mopping her brow. She would have her Diet Coke. It had to be ice cold with a paper towel around it, and she always had to have a cool drink around her. And
Okay.
so we we saw this, and we just, okay, well, that's just, what we never really talked about it. It just was what it was.
Mhm.
um and then when my mom ended up having a partial hysterectomy because she had fibroids the size of grapefruits.
Wow.
And so when she had those removed, they ended up saying, well, we might as well just do a partial hysterectomy.
Mm,
And then that just sent her straight into a surgical menopause.
mm,
And her journey through that, because I was older and I was a little bit more cognizant about what was going on, just watching that has been tough, but also it's been interesting because as I've kind of gotten older and been in this work, I've been able to help her much more.
yeah.
But again, she had terrible hot flashes, disrupted sleep,
Mm,
night sweats, and she didn't really know what was going on. She just thought, okay, well, this is just something I have to deal with.
mm,
And it's been she's well into postmenopause. She's, how old is my mom? 68.
Okay.
And she she still sometimes get night sweats.
Mm.
Um, but she's of that generation where it was very much like eat very little, always thinking about dieting, always, eating
Yes.
little as possible
Right.
to be as slim
Yeah.
as possible. And
Gosh.
so the conversations I always have to have with her about, are you eating enough?
Yeah.
That pastry that you cut up, that's not a meal. You need to eat more. It's
Mm.
just it's been really interesting where you get to the kind of age where almost you feel you're parenting your parent.
100%.
I don't.
100%. I mean, my mother is 84. She's 85 in a few months. And I don't live near her. My sister and my brothers live nearer to her, one of my brothers. But certainly we went away recently, all of us, my sister, myself, my daughters, my grandson and my mum. And one of the things we noticed is around her, yeah, she eats and she has a healthy appetite, but certainly at home, it's like she's gone from someone who loved to cook and there was always something, some kind of rice or ham hock or lentil soup or something, where now she kind of cobbles things together because she can't be bothered is the phrase, but also it's quite, cooking for yourself is, if you're not really into it, it's not fun, but also issues with her teeth, issues with her dentures. We do worry about, how much she's actually putting in or whether it's nutrient dense, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And that's been really interesting to navigate this shift into, oh, actually, I now have to think about, what's going on with my parents, what's going,
Mm.
like my mom, when she comes to visit, is she eating properly? It just, it was really interesting. When my son was born, she came over for about 6 weeks,
Yeah,
and she just did so much cooking. It was amazing. And then when she came to visit again about 2 years ago, and I had this an idea in my mind that she was going to be doing loads of cooking again and I would get to relax. I ended up doing most of the cooking. And I said this to her a couple of weeks ago. I said, when you come, can you cook a bit more? She was
mm.
like, I cooked the loads when I
Yeah,
was here before. And my son was there and he was like, no, you didn't, Mimi.
yeah.
Mama did most of the cooking.
Mm.
Um, and so, this idea of, looking at your parents as they're getting older, you're getting older,
Mm.
kind of redefining what that relationship is,
Yeah,
knowing that actually you will have to step in at a certain point and say, like, actually, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
yeah,
Um, Kind of like, you know, going back to the menopause and how I learned about it, it's now been helping my mom through that journey. And okay, you need to eat more protein. You
yeah,
need to add more protein to your breakfast. Here's some supplements that will be really helpful. Like I asked her to take some magnesium, and she was like, can't stop talking about it now. She's like, tells everyone, she's like, this changed my life.
yeah.
So that's been really, really interesting to see.
For people who don't know, what difference can magnesium take to your life? Because quite a few people I know I don't, but quite a few people take the supplement.
Yeah, so there were different forms of magnesium. Um, for my mom specifically, it was helpful for her for managing the night sweats and the night waking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Magnesium has a really calming effect on the nervous system. And
Mm.
there's a form called magnesium glycinate, so packaged in with this amino acid called glycine.
Mm-hmm.
And the research tells us that is actually really helpful for stabilizing sleep,
Right.
and also helping to reduce night sweats. So since she's been taking that, things have calmed down quite. It hasn't solved everything, but
Yeah.
things have really shifted for her. So magnesium, you just want to make sure you're taking the right type, because
Mm.
if you take magnesium citrate, and I use that with my clients who are constipated. If you
Yeah.
take it and you're not constipated, things can like get moving quite quickly. So
Okay.
always read your labels and make sure you're taking the right form of magnesium.
Right, good. You heard it here first, guys. I mean, you may have heard it elsewhere, but you heard it from Lenise Brothers. That's what I'm talking about. So, and I'm going to ask you, so where are you on your menopause journey?
So 44, being 44, I know that I'm moving into perimenopause.
Yeah.
So the way I look at perimenopause is something that is just, it's inevitable. It's a natural phase that anyone with a period, with a menstrual cycle will go through.
Mm.
And so I, and maybe that's the benefit of the work that I do, helping other
Brilliant.
women who are having this experience. But I've been able to identify what's going on with me. So I see changes in my period. Um, so my period is slightly shorter. My menstrual cycle is slightly shorter as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
My period has changed a little bit. It's actually a little bit lighter.
Mm.
And that might all sound great. Someone listening thinking, "Oh, that's great."
Mm.
But last year, one of the symptoms that I was experiencing, and this is due to estrogen levels that are just rapidly fluctuating,
Yeah.
um, was migraines.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so I was having really terrible migraines right before my period. Um, and they were to the point where when I had a migraine, I would just have to stop working.
yeah.
And first thought, okay, I'll just tough this out. And then I thought, what am I doing? Like,
That
what?
classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
I,
deal with it. I'm fine. It'll be fine.
yeah. And it wasn't fun because it was not just having a migraine over a day. It
Mm.
was that hangover of a migraine that I started to experience.
Mm.
And so I then did some research into it, figured out exactly what it was and what was going on, and
Mm.
started to take different supplements that have actually been extremely helpful for me. I get the odd headache now. So I started my period a couple of days ago, and at the weekend I had a headache. It didn't turn into a migraine,
Mm.
but I'm better at seeing when that's about to happen, and then just starting to I have some things that I do like on an ongoing basis to make sure I don't get migraines anymore, the kind of premenstrual migraines.
Mm.
um, but then when I knew it was coming, I need to just do a bit more
Yeah.
of all of these different things that help. But
Mm.
that's kind of where I am on my journey. And I I I'm really looking at this as something that I need to embrace. Getting aging is a privilege, and I know that might be a bit of a cliche because loads of people say
Yeah,
it, and
all the time. It's true.
yeah, but it really is true. You so many people, they get to this time of life and they've just been rushing through everything, and they don't really take the opportunity to take stock and think, okay, this is I'm happy with this, I'm not happy with that, and then you figure out the direction of their life, rather than being led
Yeah.
by what the day is has in store.
Mm.
So it's been, maybe that's the privilege of having my own business and
Yeah.
being able to set my own time, but I really am interested and excited about this journey ahead.
That's a fantastic attitude. And I think that I know that you were one of the first. So I obviously started following you. You started to do your, I remember you were doing your started your period story podcast, and you also started your yoga training, and it's kind of, I feel like I've been alongside you, but you were one of the first people I heard who talked about working, now let me get this right, setting up your diary and your meetings or your work to complement the different luteal phases, like the different phases in your period. I'd never heard anybody talk about that, and I remember thinking, I wish I'd had that information when I was, from the time I started my period right through my 30s and 40s. Can you explain a little bit more about why that is important?
Yeah. So when you're in your menstruating years, so you're having a menstrual cycle, which starts from day one of your period, and then it goes all the way through to the day before your next period starts. So it can be anywhere between 21 to 35 days. So we often hear, oh, 28 days. That's
Yeah.
only about 13% of people with a period have a 28-day menstrual cycle.
Is that right?
The Yeah,
I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah. The
I'm
average
today years old hearing about that. Goodness me.
Yeah, the average is actually between 25 to 30 days, but
Hmm.
anywhere between 21 and 35 days is normal.
Right.
Um, and so within these phases, within the cycle, you have four different phases, and these phases correspond with the hormonal changes that happen throughout the menstrual cycle.
Mm.
So with men, they have a 24-hour testosterone cycle. So their testosterone is high in the morning,
Mm.
and then it gradually declines throughout the day. Whereas with women,
Yeah.
they have a hormonal cycle that is anywhere between 21 to 35 days
Mm.
if everything is working as it should. Someone listening to this might think, okay, well, I have PCOS. My cycle is 90 days. Well, that's something that needs to be looked into. But what I'm talking about here is the kind of what we would ideally like to see, anywhere between 21 to 35 days. And you have five different hormones kind of guiding this cycle:
Mm.
estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. And these hormones, they rise and fall throughout each of the four phases.
Mm.
So the first, what's really interesting is using this analogy of the seasons to talk about these four phases. And for someone who's not really kind of connecting with more scientific language, this might make this more relevant. So we talk about the inner season. So we have menstruation is your inner winter.
Mm.
And this is where estrogen levels are at their lowest, progesterone levels are at their lowest. And some of us might feel kind of at our lowest ebb. But what's
Yeah.
really interesting is that this is also a time where our intuition tends to come to life. We're more likely to kind of turn in, reflect more deeply, and it can be a time where we can make better decisions because,
Oh,
yeah, we're able to kind of shut the noise out a
right.
little bit more. Um, because what I read, the doctor, I've read her book a few years ago. She talks about estrogen being the hormone of accommodation. And I
Hmm.
thought that was a really interesting way to look at it because estrogen is a feminizing hormone.
Hmm.
And as you move out of your period and your estrogen levels are rising, this is the time where you might actually start to say yes to things that you should maybe say no to because
Mm.
estrogen is feminizing, and sometimes with this feminizing aspect we can be more accommodating than we should be.
Mm.
And if you kind of jump to the end of the menstrual cycle right before the period, where sometimes we would get called, we say what's on our mind and we kind of lose that filter and
Mm.
we get called bitchy, or excuse my
Mm.
language, or,
Okay.
having, PMS, or,
Yeah.
moody, when actually we've lost, our estrogen is declining naturally, and so we don't have that more of that hormone of accommodation, and we're really actually saying what we really think.
I find this so interesting, especially in relation to menopause, where our estrogen levels are at our lowest, if at all. And that whole reaching a time of your life where you don't take any bullshit, and you're more likely to say what you feel. You're more likely to not. Sometimes it comes out as rage, but once you've got a menopause care plan in place, it's just about not taking any shite.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, yeah. And whenever I talk about this, I start to see these like kind of lights, like
Yeah.
lights go on where women are just like, wow, yeah, actually, I love that reframing. And I think there's a lot of reframing that we need to do about our cultural understanding of menstruation, menstrual cycle, perimenopause, menopause.
Mm.
Um, but so then we go out of menstruation and we go into our inner spring. So the next phase, follicular phase, our estrogen levels are rising, testosterone levels are rising. And this is a really interesting time, especially for people who have ADHD,
Okay.
because with ADHD, one of the issues is there's issues around serotonin and dopamine. So
Mm.
dopamine is this kind of reward, motivation neurotransmitter that we produce in our brain. Serotonin is a hormone, but it's also a neurotransmitter, and it's the chemical of happiness.
Mm.
As estrogen levels rise, so do serotonin, so do dopamine. So
Right.
if you have ADHD, you might notice that after your period, you might start to feel a little bit more locked in.
Mm.
And this might be a great time for you.
Mm.
Um, and then conversely, towards the end of your period, as estrogen levels are starting to decline, serotonin declines,
Mm.
dopamine declines. And this is where talking about care plans, you need to have this ADHD care plan in place for the end of your menstrual cycle when
Yeah.
you know that these things are naturally going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you don't have ADHD, this can be a really great time because you've got a ton of energy, you're feeling really motivated, you're kind of feeling very social. So if you're dating, this is a great time to kind of set up dates, to go on dates.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you move into the kind of what I think of it as the central point of the menstrual cycle, ovulation.
Yeah.
And this is where if everything is going as it should, you have a ton of energy, your testosterone has peaked, your estrogen has just peaked, your communication is fantastic, you're on dates, your libido is strong, you're kind of your body wants you to be out in the world, and
Yeah.
this everyone experiences this at a different level. This isn't about being an extrovert.
Yeah.
It's just, what does the extroversion look like for you? It's just, your mileage might vary. Um, then then you move out of this phase. So this is our inner summer to the last phase. So inner winter, luteal phase. I like to think of this as having two parts. In the first part, you've got a lot of progesterone.
Mm.
Progesterone is, we only release it when we ovulate. It's a very calming hormone. You
Mm.
still have a lot of energy, and but it's to kind of really tamp down. So you kind of calm, or you're able to do what you need to do.
Mm.
Last part, and this is where people typically think of this as like PMS. Would love to move away from just thinking of PMS as something that we just inevitably experience,
Yeah.
because PMS is just, it's a syndrome, and all a syndrome is a collection of different symptoms. If
Mm.
you're labeling yourself as I am PMSy, or I'm PMSing, or I have PMS, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not the kind of dialing into the specific symptoms that you're experiencing. Because PMS, there are different cultures that don't even experience PMS. We
Mm.
know that it's not inevitable. So this is a time actually that can be quite interesting, where we talked earlier about estrogen levels declining and being a bit more straight talking, a bit
Mm.
more to the point. This is a time also where you can actually feel this kind of different energy coming in, because your body knows that this cycle is about to end and you're
Yeah.
about to start your next period. So you get this kind of, it's not nesting energy, but it is an energy where your body kind of wants to just clear the decks, get
Yeah.
through everything it needs to get through,
Yeah.
um, to prepare you to go into your next period, where ideally it wants you to slow down.
Wow.
So it's really interesting to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the four phase of the cycle and look beyond just the period and what's going on there, and think about how you can harness all of this if you're still having periods,
Yeah.
even if you're perimenopausal. This does apply.
Yeah.
How you can harness all of this for your benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 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 First of all, take a sip of your drink because you said a lot. I never, oh, I've never had it explained like that before. I don't like the sciencey words, and I am turned off by science. I prefer the conversations. I'm a kinesthetic learner. If you're in front of me and you're explaining something to me, if you're singing, if you're moving, if you're dancing, I'm listening and in your case, smiling. But also, we would benefit from this information. All of us, not just people who have periods, all of us would benefit from this much earlier on. Schools could be created, or curriculums could be created around the cycle, so that maybe, girls who are experiencing menopause have different, different subjects on different days, that kind of thing. Honestly, leading into obviously the workplace, we could all benefit from understanding our partners, people we have relationships with, our parents, as well as ourselves. And the key to this, it comes back to, is what we're always saying. I'm sure you're saying this as well, about knowing yourself and understanding yourself, and not necessarily, like you said, labeling yourself as well. How do you support? I'm fascinated now. You've hooked me. Buy Lisa's book, for goodness sake. Honestly, you can have a better period. Go and get it. I will link it in the show notes. Amazing. Um, how do you advise people to get a handle on these phases? Like, what do you use? Is there a period tracker that you recommend? Do you ask them to write things down? What do you do?
Yeah, so this can be as detailed or not detailed as you want. For some of us, it might be starting with observing what's going on during your period,
Mm.
um, because so often what I see in my practice is women come to me and say, "Well, I have I have a really painful period," and then
Mm.
I say, "Okay, well, tell me more. What days is it painful? What does the pain feel like? Can you describe the pain? Where is it on the body?" And
Right.
sometimes, when women come to me, they've gone through that journey, because, that's why they come to me, because they want to kind of figure out. But sometimes it's the first time that they've even thought about it. Oh, they have this, just, my period is really painful, and I've been taking whatever pain relief to manage it. And so it's really about starting to develop a vocabulary
Yeah.
around your health. And that starts with your period. How
Mm.
many days is your period? What's going on for you? And again, this can be as detailed as you like. It can be just saying, like, I'm at the point now where I know when my period starts, I know when it ends,
Yeah.
and I just kind of observe what's going on.
Mm.
Um, I observe any changes and then do any tweaks that I need to do to kind of fix what I need to fix. But then if you want to go a little bit deeper, that's where you start to say, okay, my period is finished, going into the next phase. Again, tuning into what's going on to you. I think we can be so externally focused.
Yeah.
You know, what do I need to do for this person? What do I need? Whether you have kids, whether you're managing a busy business or you're having a really busy job, we can be so focused on what we have to do for other people
Yeah.
when it can be so helpful for us to be able to slow down a little bit and say, okay, how am I feeling in this moment?
Yeah.
What's my energy like? Do I have any cravings? What's my mood like? Just taking a beat and just tuning in. No
Mm.
judgment. Just say, okay, actually, I feel a little bit angry at the
Mm.
moment. And just being okay with feeling a little bit angry.
Yeah.
Then ovulation. So something that's really interesting is if you want to go to the next level here, not only if you're trying to get pregnant, is using something called basal body temperature tracking.
Okay.
And this might be a new concept for those that are listening, but this is also really helpful in perimenopause as well.
Okay.
So our
So what's it called? Say it again.
basal, BASAL,
Okay.
body temperature tracking. So BBT,
Okay.
not BBL, BBT.
Thanks for the clarification.
And so this is basically using a thermometer. So it's a digital thermometer. And it's as simple as going down to Boots and just picking up a cheap digital thermometer.
Yeah.
And you take your temperature at the same time every morning within 10 minutes of waking.
Mm.
And this is interesting because after ovulation, our temperature starts to rise.
Okay.
And this is because of progesterone. Progesterone is it's a warming hormone.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about before perimenopause and then perimenopause.
Mm.
So before perimenopause, this is really interesting because it confirms whether or not you've ovulated. So this is a really interesting way and kind of just low pressure way of checking where you are in your menstrual cycle and confirming that you've ovulated. If you're
Mm.
trying to conceive, this adds a fantastic layer that can be really, really helpful to say, yes, I've I've ovulated. Great. If you then you're going through perimenopause, and what actually is really helpful is to say, oh, actually, I haven't ovulated this cycle. And then you're adding in that extra level of care
Mm.
because with progesterone, it's natural during perimenopause to not ovulate every cycle. We just start to ovulate less and less.
Mm.
Totally normal, totally natural. But we don't benefit from progesterone, which is really calming, anti inflammatory, affects our mood, affects our sleep, affects the digestive system.
Mm.
So if you've done this temperature tracking, you're able to say, oh, okay, I haven't ovulated this cycle. This
Yeah.
means that I just need to take a little bit more care,
Yeah.
observe, notice, and maybe I need to be a little bit more tender with myself.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and thinking, okay, that just maybe this temperature thing sounds like a bit of a faff. Something else that you could do that also is a way of tracking where you are in your menstrual cycle is to use your cervical fluid.
Okay.
So you have your period, and the menstrual fluid is made of blood, is made of mucus, cells, and tissue. It's
Mm.
not just blood as everyone might think.
Mm-hmm.
After you finish your period, your estrogen levels start to rise. What estrogen does is that it also controls the cervical fluid. So this is what we some people might call discharge.
Yeah.
That's what you see in your knickers or
Yeah.
when you wipe.
Yeah.
This changes as you move towards ovulation, and
Okay.
this is controlled by estrogen. There are four different types, and as you move closer to ovulation, that's where it becomes more fertile. It kind of pulls the sperm towards the egg.
Okay.
Um, where this becomes really interesting for perimenopause is if you haven't, ovulation basically stops this because
Yeah.
progesterone starts to rise and it stops the cervical fluid. But if you haven't ovulated, you still have a lot of estrogen. And so you're still producing the cervical fluid. So this is another way, if you're in perimenopause and you're not doing basal body temperature tracking, that you can say, oh, okay, I don't think I've ovulated this menstrual cycle.
Mm.
So your body is giving you so much
Signals.
information.
Yeah. Signals. So many signals. So much to take in. I'm going to enjoy listening back to this. I'm going to take notes then, I think. Um, I want to talk about food. I
Yeah.
want to ask you because you have produced some incredible reels with most colourful rainbow-like salads and that kind of thing. Um, but the question is about you. Do you eat differently, uh, consciously when you are on your period?
Um, that's a really good question. So
I ask it because, obviously, food, diet, lifestyle are all very important to managing your menopause well, managing perimenopause well, and so on and so forth. Um, but the argument is we should be eating healthily all the time. But, we're human, we don't do that. But I'm saying, do you, is it something that you think more about when you are either entering, your period, maybe the week before or that kind of thing? How does diet, you know,
so
influence
is this a what I do
what
specifically,
you
or
specific?
like what I think we should do?
You can answer both. You can answer both. You're a human.
Yeah. Okay. So let me talk generally, and then I'll
Okay.
tell you what I do.
Okay.
So I think it's really important to observe how you're feeling as you're going into your period.
Mm,
Um, observe your energy levels, observe your mood.
mm,
And I talked earlier about being able to delineate the different symptoms you experience right before your period rather than just grouping this into PMS. And
mhm.
if you're feeling, so if you're feeling bloated, for example, that could be the need for potassium.
Okay.
Um, because sometimes when we have too much sodium in the body, sodium and potassium, they balance each other out. These are two minerals that we can get through food and drink. Um, bloating can be a sign that we need more potassium. It can be a sign of constipation. It can be a sign of issues in the gut.
Yeah.
But when we're talking specifically about food, it can be a sign of a need for potassium. So bananas,
Yeah.
potatoes, sweet
Right.
potatoes, great
Right.
sources of potassium.
Mm,
Um, so observing in detail how you're feeling right before your period,
yeah.
and then taking that observation into your period.
Mm,
Oh, do I feel really tired? Do I have a heavy period and I'm feeling really tired?
mm,
You know, often my mind goes straight to what's going on with the kind of iron levels.
right.
There is at the moment, I don't know if it's as big as it was a couple of years ago, but certainly I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, it was a huge kind of not craze, but kind of being vegetarian, being vegan was very much
Yeah.
like in vogue.
People put it in their bios.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when you're vegetarian and vegan, you have to concentrate a lot more on getting enough
Mm,
iron in your
yeah.
body,
Mm,
because iron is so important for making energy, for making blood. And if you have low iron levels, you can get into this vicious cycle of having a really heavy period, losing a lot of iron, that iron level persisting, not being able to take it up to the levels that you need to get to
mm,
correct things to then feel better in yourself. So it's just this observation that I keep coming back to, adding in more iron foods,
mm,
being really mindful if you're vegan, vegetarian, about the amount of iron, the amount of copper that's in your food, because we need copper in order to utilize iron effectively. So
okay.
iron foods. So red meat, we can have a conversation about red meat if you want.
I don't eat red meat. Well, I'm going to say I don't eat it anymore. The other day I went out and I had a burger. So, but
Well,
I don't cook. I don't cook it. Every now and then I fancy meat. What can I say?
yeah,
But the common wisdom, I guess, is that as we get older, meat is harder to digest. It's not as beneficial for us. Maybe as we get older, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Maybe I shouldn't be telling you. Maybe you should be telling me.
I don't actually think that's true. I
Oh,
think that,
that's more.
yeah. So I think that, so after you go through menopause and you're not menstruating anymore,
Mm,
you're not losing iron through your menstrual fluid. So
mm,
you don't need to be as iron focused, but
okay.
we still have a need for iron. It's
Mm,
just on this becomes to the same goes to the same level as men.
right.
And actually, what can be really helpful is we can have issues where we have too much iron. So,
Mm,
what I tell my clients who are postmenopausal is actually donate blood every 6 months,
right.
just to kind of do that correction of
Mm,
iron in the
mm,
blood.
mm,
Um, but if you, with red meat, we still need it because it's not just about iron. It has loads of other benefits.
mm,
B vitamins, which are important for energy,
mm,
protein, which is
mm,
important for energy, for the thyroid, for healthy hair,
mm,
skin.
mm.
Um, it's got lots of zinc in it as well,
Yeah.
which is so important for our brain health, for our immune system.
Mm,
Um, if you have an issue with digesting specific foods, that doesn't mean that you just shouldn't eat that food. You
mm,
have to look at, why aren't you able to digest that food? What's going on in the stomach
mm,
that's stopping you from doing that?
mm,
Because digestion starts in the brain.
mm.
When you think about a food, your mouth starts watering. If you think about the best plate of food you've eaten in the last week, I bet
Yeah.
your mouth will start
Yeah.
watering,
Yeah.
because your you then start to produce saliva, which has digestive enzymes in it. Then goes down the esophagus to the gut, to the stomach, which then has different enzymes to break down carbohydrates, fat,
Yeah.
protein.
Yeah.
If you stop eating a certain type of food, you then lose the enzymes that you need to
Mm.
digest that food.
Okay.
So you need to work on rebuilding those digestive enzymes so that you can then digest that food and you have enough stomach acid in order to digest that food. It's not a case of, your digestion is just poor as you get older, which I have heard before, and it's
Yes.
not true.
And I have always subscribed to that, and you are actually blowing my mind. And also, you know, I've just gone off it as well. I mean, it's not something. I suppose my thing is, if I'm going to eat meat, I'm going to eat the best meat I can. I'm not necessarily going to be, buying the cheap stuff or that kind of thing. But certainly there's a lot of stuff out there, particularly for older people, older women, menopausal women around will become pescatarian is the best way forward.
I don't agree with that. You,
I love this. I am loving this. Okay. So what do you do? You said what you think people should do. What do you do when it comes to, eating around, particularly around caring for your menstruation?
yeah. So, well, what I do personally is, a lot of what I cook and my husband cooked is dictated by our son and what we think he will
Good.
eat. I mean, having a 10-year-old, their palates are developing, but you can't get too crazy. But I do, I do think it's really important to tune in and listen to what you're craving. So, you know, I do find that when I have my period, I do want more red meat.
Mm.
Um, I was a vegetarian for 15 years, and
Ah,
that was a time when I had the worst periods. I was depressed, I
mm,
was anxious,
mm,
and I started adding meat back in. And I'm not saying my life changed, but
mm,
I had more energy. My periods weren't as heavy,
mm,
and I wasn't as depressed.
mm.
There is your our body. I'm not. It doesn't work for everyone. You have to
No,
figure
well,
out
that's
what
what I was going
works.
to say, and I know you're not saying that, but I'm
Yeah,
glad you added that caveat because this is
yeah.
your personal journey. It doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly. But
Mm,
your body gives you messages. So you're saying you had a craving for meat.
mm,
Your cravings are a signal from your body that
yeah,
it needs something. So maybe your body needed something that not necessarily iron, but
yeah,
something that was in that burger. So on my period, I eat a little bit more red meat. It's the
okay.
highest quality. I tend to buy free range, organic.
Mm,
I do I do really try to just really give myself lots of, foods that I enjoy. Make this a
yeah.
really enjoyable time. At
Yeah.
the moment, whatever for breakfast, I've been doing a lot of omelets.
Oh, I'm
Um,
a big fan of eggs for breakfast. Oh,
yeah,
I never
yeah,
thought I'd say that. I was always toast and jam, toast and peanut butter and bananas and cinnamon, which is actually still very nice. But now
yeah,
I've turned it around so it's more savoury and yeah, eggs. And also I was brought up, do you remember what was that name of the politician who said that eggs were bad for you? At some point there was a whole government thing about if you had more than I don't know 5 eggs in a week, it would mean that your cholesterol levels would go through the roof and you would die. That's an exaggeration, but do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I'm glad I can eat eggs again. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a lot of misinformation around food, and like
Mm.
there's still people that read a comment the other day where someone was talking about, that influencer Eddie Abu, and how he talks about eggs all the time. There's a guy on TikTok.
Oh,
I,
is he a bodybuilder?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he like loves having eggs,
Mm.
and people were like, "Oh, his cholesterol," but eating eggs isn't going to raise your cholesterol levels. It's sugar. It's processed food. It's
Mm.
it's stress.
And it's not
Um,
exercising as well. It's you have to do all the things.
yeah, exactly. So I guess the message is really you you listen to your body, listen to your cravings,
Mm.
figure out what that means.
Mm.
Cravings are a sign from the body, and figure out what works for you rather than feeling like you have to be pescatarian or you have to be vegan, you have to be vegetarian.
Yeah.
When you're going through perimenopause and then beyond, you need more protein,
Mm.
and you need to get that protein from somewhere. And eating fish, eating red meat, eating poultry is an easy way to get protein. You don't need to eat as much of it.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
and
But
and maybe
what if you're craving donuts, Lanice?
that's yeah. Well, that's a great question because we can label food as good and bad, and or
Mm,
I'm being good today. I'm
yeah,
being I'm bad. I've had a donut. Have the
yeah,
donut is
yeah,
this is what I say to my client. Have the donut, but
mm,
enjoy it. Don't
yeah,
just scoff it. Really enjoy the donut. Enjoy that moment of pleasure that you
yeah,
get from having the donut. Don't necessarily have a donut every day,
yeah.
but when you
Yeah,
have it,
yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah. I like to consider myself a healthy eater, and I also, in that, I eat what I want to eat. And yesterday, I was craving gooey chocolate cake. So there's
Mm.
a local bakeries, and I went in there, and I got to my turn, and the lady said, "What would you like?" And I said, "I'd like that piece of chocolate cake." I didn't realize how massive it was. I thought it was two. And she said it's called the Matilda cake. You know the film Matilda, where the little boy is for Miss Trunchbull makes him eat the cake. It looks like that. Listen, I brought that home and I had it. I sat myself down and I fully enjoyed the gooiness, the richness, And I know that I'm not having that every day. It make me feel sick, but I'm very glad that you said, that because we've been socialized to believe that even Weight Watchers, they call them sins, or they label things bad and good. So it's wonderful to hear you say that. How do you celebrate yourself, Lanice?
How do I celebrate myself? Mm, I don't know. How do I?
Did you do some, for example, when you released a book last year? It's huge,
Yeah,
right? Big deal.
yeah.
Uh, Other than the external celebrations, like a book launch and glass of champagne, whatever, or not, how do you celebrate that you did that? Writing a book is no mean feat, you know.
I think I think what I really like to do is I. This is a great question because you kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Um, because I'm very much the type of person that I move on. You know, if
Right.
something doesn't work, I just move on. If
Mm,
something, I do self reflect, but I learned that it's not helpful to ruminate on things, good or bad.
mm.
So I tend to I just keep it moving. And
Yes.
what I have learned is that it's important to kind of think about where I am now. So I did this the other day. I was thinking, wow, like if Lenise 5 years ago could
Yeah.
see what I'm doing now, she would think, holy cow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I do like to do that. I do like to, at the beginning of the year, every year, I write intentions out for the year and I
Mm.
like to look at those and I found one that I wrote in 2018 and I read it and I was like, did this, did this, did this. And like,
Amazing.
I guess that's the kind of way that I celebrate
Yeah.
myself. But I
Yeah.
have to remember to do it because I'm very much like, okay, what's the next thing? I just like to just keep it moving.
I think it's nice. Do you journal at all? Do you journal?
No,
Yeah,
no.
I think it's nice to reflect on, there's navel glazing, there's like, constantly looking at what you've done. But I think there's something to be said for celebrating little wins and big wins as well. I'm not good at it. And but I have two daughters who are very good at reminding me, look what you've done, whether it, and for, don't get me wrong, I also like a celebration. I like a cake. I like a nice meal, but yeah, it is very easy for us to keep going, keep going, keep going. And so I urge you to remind yourself that you did that, not just yearly,
Yeah,
because the Lenice I met, with your PowerPoint and
yeah.
telling everybody about nutrition is so. The journey you've been on is incredible, and I am so honoured and privileged that you took the time to sit down with me and have this chat. So thank you for that. Which tune instantly makes you want to dance?
Um, which tune? Young Hearts Run Free by Candy
Oh, Candy
Staton.
Staton.
Yeah,
Is that a blast from the past?
yeah.
I love that. I will add that to our Menopause Was Black Spotify playlist. And last question, final question. Um, what's the one piece of advice you would give to anyone listening to us right now? It can be about their periods, about perimenopause, or just generally.
I would say that if you're in perimenopause, it's
Mm,
really important to take take time and figure out what's going on for you.
mm,
Really understand what you're experiencing, your symptoms, what when they occur during your menstrual cycle,
mm.
whether it's bloating, whether it's pain, whether it's mood swings, and have a vocabulary
Yeah.
around your experience. And
Mm,
then just to add on to that, I would also say that what you do every day can be a really important foundation and can change so many different aspects of your health. You
mm.
know, just to kind of provide a little bit of a counterbalance to the HRT conversation that seems to
Yes,
be
please.
dominating.
Mm,
You eat 3 meals a day,
yeah.
7 days a week. That's 21 different opportunities every single week to
Mm,
add in foods that can make a positive impact on your health. This I would say start there. What are you eating? What are you drinking? What can you add in
mm,
that can make a positive impact on your health? Because it's really important to find a way to feel empowered rather than let this natural change of life that we all experience disempower you and let run away with you. You
yeah.
know, not everyone experiences this time in the same way. And what I do find troubling, and I'm not gonna rant, I'm just gonna close it off
You can
very
rant if you
quickly.
want. It's fine. It's my podcast. You can do what you like, love.
I do find troubling is this narrative that seems to have taken hold that menopause is just about symptoms. Perimenopause is just about the symptoms that you experience, and HRT is the only answer. When perimenopause happens, it happens, and it will happen, and it's something that you'll go through, and you can't fight it. It's about understanding what's going on for you
Mm,
and making things work for you. What you do every day can make a difference. And
mm,
then if you want to add HRT on top of that,
yeah.
great. That's your decision, but that's not the only way.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you got that in. People are going to want to connect with you. How can they find you?
So you can find me on socials. So Instagram and TikTok at Eat Love Move.
Mhm,
My website is www.eatlovemove.com.
mhm.
And you can also find my book, You Can Have a Better Period, anywhere you buy books online.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lenise. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for your words, your wisdom, and your fun. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So, what did you think? What did you think? Did Lenice's words resonate with you? Was there anything there that you felt like, oh my goodness me, I did not know this? Or was there stuff that made you think again? Lenice has some wonderful words and knowledge and intel around, particularly around periods and around perimenopause and beyond. And I was excited to make sure that you got to hear her and hear what she's got to say. Do get her book. You can have a better period. It's available in all good bookshops and online. I will put a link in the show notes. For me, you probably heard it in my voice. A couple of big takeaways. First of all, the way she explained how the luteal phase works and how periods work and how hormones work. I've never had it explained to me in quite that way. As I said when I was talking to her, I am a kinesthetic learner. If you're moving, dancing, talking to me, visuals, I love all of that. I'm very good at taking information in there. I have an excellent movement memory. One of the things that I loved when I was training to be a dance teacher was that although I wasn't the most flexible and I couldn't do the splits and I wasn't the most graceful in the class, the one thing I could do was remember the routines. So maybe that's something to do with it. I don't know. Anyway, I loved the way she explained it. I've listened back twice now and I intend to listen again. When I was at school, that stuff wasn't explained. I'm sure you're exactly the same, but certainly biology wasn't my thing. Maybe it was the way it was taught, but so I'm grateful to Lenise for that. But the other takeaway was around food and around being a flexitarian. I had believed, and I will do my own research as well, and I urge you to do the same. So one thing about this podcast is that whilst some of my guests are experts, some of them, we're all sharing our stories. I am definitely not an expert. And so I think it's really important that when you hear things like this, if they resonate with you or you're not sure about them, go and look them up. Go and Google is your friend, So definitely, yeah. So I thought that as you got older, your metabolism slowed down and therefore it was harder to digest meat products. And maybe that's a simplified way of putting it, but that's how I speak. So that's what I thought. And so that was one of the reasons that I stopped eating meat. The other reason was when I left teaching, I couldn't afford it. It was expensive. And I thought, you know what, this is a good time to stop. And also, I kind of went off it. I'm not going to lie. So I haven't prepared meat for almost a decade, maybe longer. But I kind of felt comfortable in the knowledge that, well, it's not that good for me anyway. So Lenice's words did make me have a think. And I am aware that when I do go out, as I said, I'd had a burger the other day. It was delicious. What you don't know is when I went to Barbados, it's almost like the minute I touch down, I'm around food and meat that is prepared and really, really fresh. It's not the stuff that's injected with hormones. It's not the stuff that's traveled far. It's not, it's not been sitting on a shelf for a while. I'm having beef, I'm eating lamb, I'm eating chicken that has been running around 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours before. So it plus it's seasoned really well and it's soft and it's beautiful. So there's something about eating food in my home country or in Barbados, in the Caribbean, lots of countries where, let's just say, what we call marginalized humans on this side of the planet, that's where they live, So, yeah, it's really made me think. But certainly for me, and I hope for you as well, it will be around listening to your body. There are days, weeks when I'm not interested in eating, certain foods, certainly foods that are going to make me feel heavy or sluggish. And other times I want all the meat, or I want the bread, or I want the wheat, or I want whatever works for me. as long as you are also choosing an exercise, choosing a variety of exercise that suits your body's needs. Today, I thought I was going to go for a run. I so didn't go for a run. I stayed in bed for a while. It's Sunday, I'm recording this now. And then I got up and I did the longest stretch, and it was glorious. So that's what my body needed. And I plan to honour that for as long as I draw breath. And I hope that you do too. Well, I've rambled on a bit, haven't I? What do I need to tell you? I need you to know that the Joy Retreat Barbados 2025 is imminent. And when I have all my ducks in order, what is it? Ducks in a row, bottles in a row, something. When I've got it all sorted out, you will be one of the first people to know. And I will give you information around payment plans and so on and so forth. And for those of you who don't know what the Joy Retreat Barbados, it is the world's first retreat designed for, created by and for Black women in any stage of menopause. We had our last cohort. In fact, it's this week is the first year anniversary of last year's cohort. And I have been all up in my feelings about, I don't know, what we created and the friendships that we made and the steps that were made and the life changes that occurred. And I have been reminded of this by some of the people who went in the Joy Retreat group. I particularly want to shout out Rebecca, who shared a memory on Instagram, and all the other wonderful women who joined us. So, yeah, and we're doing it again. We're doing it again in 2025, and I can't wait. If you need a date, it's the 28th of April to the 5th of May. But yeah, you'll get more information. Okay, I gotta go. Let me see. Yes, if you love this episode, please share it with someone you think needs to hear these words. I talk about menopause a lot, and I am guilty of assuming that everybody knows about that when they're in a certain stage of life. But that is not the case. And I'm always meeting people who are talking to me, often random strangers, about things that they're going through. And I'm always thinking, does this person need to go to the doctors? I know not everything is down to perimenopause and menopause, but I'll tell you what, a lot is. So share it with someone you think might need to hear these words. Share it in a WhatsApp group, put it in an email, share it on your social media platforms, or better still, have a chat. Have a chat with people at work, have a chat with your friends, keep this conversation going so the ripple effect takes it further and further and further out into the UK and beyond. Do leave a review for us. You can leave it on YouTube. The subscribers are rising. Thank you for that if you've subscribed to us on YouTube. It sounds like the visuals and the audio works better for many people. So I'm glad that my lovely editor, Erin, and my gorgeous teammate, who happens to be my eldest daughter, Kareem, are behind that and have been cheering me on and urging me to get on it. So thank you for that. We're also on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Podbean, can't think of any more, Audible. That's Amazon, isn't it? Anyway, then leave a review. There are no reviews on Audible. Do people not listen to podcasts on Audible? I wonder. Yeah, I might. Yeah, that would be great. Because that will help the algorithms to find us. That means that we would reach more and more ears who need to feel less alone. What else do I need to say? If you would like to sponsor an episode or sponsor a season of Menopause Whilst Black, hit me up at thekarenarthur@mail.com and we can discuss packages. And if you miss my voice, or you want to hear me talk about something else, remember that I am also a host of a bi-weekly radio show, Can We Talk, on Gold Dust Radio, which happens every other Saturday at 11 a.m. So that's Gold Dust Radio, 11 a.m. or on a Saturday. The next one, it's every 2 weeks, and the next one is on Saturday, the 11th of May, which is this Saturday. That's me. That's me. I'm done. I'm going to finish my lovely, lovely coffee. I'm going to go out into the sunshine. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to put some more SPF on. Yeah, I'm going to mind my business and I'm going to keep it moving. And I hope you do too. Take good care. Be gentle with yourselves, won't you? Okay, bye.